This is my story of the night me and my friends were ambushed, held at gunpoint in a dark alley, and we were assured we weren't leaving alive. And all because of mistaken identity.
He says, I will shoot the cops and I will shoot you. He said, you know what? I'm tired of talking. I'm ready to start shooting. And then he went, and that was it. We just waited.
There is an unwritten code in Brooklyn. You don't tell anyone else's stories, and you don't talk about anyone else's business. Every story I tell is mine. Locations, names, and specific details have all been changed to honor that code. This is Brooklyn Files, the real stories.
That night taught me that things can go from absolutely normal and you're not expecting anything, and then all of a sudden your life changes like that. I think the first thought that I knew we were in trouble, the feeling of like you're sinking and you're slowly going down some kind of a trap door and you're being pulled down, and then you come to this ultimate realization that there's no exit. You're not getting out. You're done. This is it. This is the end. I don't think I've ever experienced that feeling ever again in my life since that night. So it was just days before Christmas, and we were hanging out. It was about 4 of us. It was me and 3 other friends, and we were all good, close friends. We hung out all the time, so we were like attached at the hip. It was late at night. It was deserted. There was no cars, no foot traffic. Nobody was out. It was probably 12:31 a.m. And the 4 of us are just on this street corner, nobody else around. And it was the days of the pagers, or beepers, as you would call them, and you wore it on your side, it clipped to your belt. And if you wore one, you would get a page and it would be somebody's phone number, and then you would call that phone number back, and that's how we communicated back in the days. So we were paging somebody on a payphone, and we're on the street corner. We were scoring weed from some guy we knew. It was one of the few guys that we would hit up for weed when we wanted some. And we're waiting for this guy to call us back, and we're all out on the street corner. And we're drinking, and we're getting a little loud and rowdy, and we're laughing and what have you. And I guess the phone rings, my buddy picks it up. And just as we're talking to the guy, I guess my friend's laughing on the phone with the guy that he's talking to. And suddenly it went from 4 of us to all of a sudden there was 5 of us. It happened that quick. Like, you didn't see this guy walk up or anything. It was just 4 of us, and then you turned around, you heard another voice, you saw this guy standing there, and he says, "Hang up the phone, Smiley." We were scoring weed from some guy we knew. It was one of the few guys that we would hit up for weed when we wanted some. And we're waiting for this guy to call us back, and we're all out on the street corner. And we're drinking, and we're getting a little loud and rowdy, and we're laughing and what have you. And I guess the phone rings, my buddy picks it up. And just as we're talking to the guy, I guess my friend's laughing on the phone with the guy that he's talking to. And suddenly it went from 4 of us to all of a sudden there was 5 of us. It happened that quick. Like, you didn't see this guy walk up or anything. It was just 4 of us, and then you turned around, you heard another voice, you saw this guy standing there, and he says, "Hang up the phone, Smiley." And as he's saying that, he has looked like a 9mm or something sticking out of the sleeve of his jacket, pointed right at us. And he's got a hood on and sunglasses, and he's got a scarf around his face. And so you couldn't see who this guy was. He was completely disguised. So the second he did that, I guess we're all kind of looking at each other like, we know this guy, right? Like, he's one of us, this is a joke, right? That's what we thought. because it wasn't out of the ordinary for somebody we knew to be carrying a gun. It was just kind of the way things went down back in the day in Brooklyn. I mean, you know, a lot of people did that. So I think we all just thought like, okay, this is one of our friends, this is a joke, he's just playing with us. So we're all kind of looking at each other, and quickly the smiles went to like, okay, what the F is going on? Like, what exactly is happening here, and who is this guy? And that's when we started to realize, like, this guy wasn't joking. And so my friend hangs up the phone. We're all looking at each other like, what's about to happen here? And he just says, start walking. I'm gonna stay behind you. If anybody runs, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. And so we listened to his orders because nobody wanted to die. So we started walking, and he says, nobody run. Everybody just calm down. We're just gonna walk. I'll tell you how far to walk. I'll tell you when to turn. Just keep walking, nice and slow, and nobody's gonna get shot. If anybody runs, and he said it again, anybody runs, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna shoot you right in the back. So we're just walking, and I remember thinking, this was the moment when I went, wow, like, there's no getting out of this. Even if we try to run now, this guy's gonna start popping shots at all of us, and he's got the advantage, and nobody's got a gun on them. But he does on our backs, and we didn't know what to do. So we were obviously in big danger. I think the first thought that I knew we were in trouble, the feeling of like you're sinking and you're slowly going down some kind of a trap door and you're being pulled down, and then you come to this ultimate realization that there's no exit. You're not getting out. You're done. This is it. This is the end. Again, this was late at night, not one car on the street. It was just us, completely deserted, days before Christmas. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing two headlights coming from down the street towards us. And my initial thought was, somebody's coming. Maybe this is a chance to like make a run for it, you know, and like maybe wave for help. But no sooner do we see these headlights coming at us, it became very obvious that it was a police car. It was the NYPD, and it's just a patrol car. I kid you not, only car on the street. It's just us and this guy with a gun pointed to our back, and there's a police car driving up the street, the only car on the street, nobody else out there. And it's getting closer. Not one car on the street. It was just us, completely deserted, days before Christmas. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing two headlights coming from down the street towards us. But no sooner do we see these headlights coming at us, it became very obvious that it was a police car. It was the NYPD, and it's just a patrol car. I kid you not, only car on the street. It's just us and this guy with a gun pointed to our back, and there's a police car, and it's getting closer. And the next thing he says, everybody keep walking. Here comes a cop. Nobody panic. Nobody run. He says, if anybody runs, I'm gonna shoot you and I'm gonna shoot the cops. So don't try it. He says, I will shoot the cops and I will shoot you. We got that message loud and clear, like nobody's gonna try to run. I can't tell you the feeling of having a guy pointing a gun at our backs. We don't know what this guy's intentions were. We don't know what he wanted from us, why he was there, what the extent of what he planned on doing to us. And seeing a cop car driving by, your only sort of like life raft, if you will, driving by and knowing you can't do a thing, it was unbelievable. I can't tell you the amount of discipline it took to not run into the street and flag these cops down. But we had heard what he just said, and we all took that very seriously because he sounded like he meant it. And after the cops passed, he said, I want you to turn into this alleyway coming up over here. So we walked about a block away. There's an alley to our right, And that was when I realized, I'm like, this guy's taking us into a dark, deserted alley at like 1 a.m., nobody's around. I'm like, this guy's gonna kill us. And there's not gonna be any witnesses. Maybe they'll hear a gunshot, maybe they won't, but this guy's gonna get away with our murder. And this is what I was thinking. I was certain of it. We turn right, we go into this alley. The four of us are still completely puzzled. We don't know what this guy wants from us. He hasn't stated what he wants from us yet. We get about maybe 100 yards into this dark alley. It's a long alley, it's about a block long, but we get about halfway in and it's like pitch black, and there are some garages and there's backs of houses, but everybody's sleeping. It's late at night. There's nobody out there, not a dog, not a cat, not a person, no one. So we get to the middle of this alley and he says, everybody face me. Get against the wall and face me. And he still has his face covered, he has his sunglasses on, he has the scarf over his mouth, he's got the hood over his head. You can't see who this guy is, you just hear his voice, and he's got this gun. And so he started just asking us these weird questions, and he's picking on us individually, and he's like, you, what's your name? And I'm like, I tell him my name, and then he says, you, where do you live? And he says where he lives, and then, what's your address? And he says his address. What's your mother's name? He asked this other guy, what's your mother's name? We're like, why does he need to know this? In fact, I think one of us was even like, why do you need to know this kind of stuff? And he says, I'll ask the questions, you shut up, what's your mother's name? And we were like, my friend answered the question. And then he asked me, or I think he asked me, he's like, are you wearing something on that chain? And I said, yeah, there's a cross. He says, let me see it. And I pull out the cross and I show him. And then he says to one of my other friends, do you have a wallet in your pocket? And he says, yes. He says, what's in your wallet? He said, I don't know, 20 bucks or whatever the answer was, he told him. And then he said, show me. So my friend breaks out his wallet, shows him the 20 bucks. He doesn't say a word. We still don't know what he wants. He's not taking anything from us, so he's clearly not robbing us. This isn't what he wanted from us. He started to tell us what we were there for, and he suddenly said, somebody attacked my brother. He's in intensive care. He may or may not live, and I'm out to get the people who did it, and I'm gonna kill them tonight. And I think it's you guys. And that's when I said, man, we're in trouble. Because I don't know how we're gonna convince this guy that we weren't the ones that hurt his brother, but I think he's out for blood, and I think he's gonna get it. It was terrifying, because we couldn't do a thing. He had all the power, he had the gun, we had nothing. Days before, his brother was walking up that same street, past that same street corner that we had been on, and there were a group of guys, 5, 6, 7 guys, whatever it was, and his brother happened to be walking by and minding his own business. He was going home, and these guys chased him. They attacked him. They beat the crap out of him for no reason, apparently. And now this kid is supposedly clinging to life in like intensive care. And this guy's distraught because he says he doesn't know if his brother's gonna live. And he says, I'm here to kill the people that did this to my brother. I want blood, I'm gonna kill them tonight. And I'm not convinced it's not you guys. And that's when we had to start really kind of using our personalities and our intellect to kind of like tell this guy like, hey man, we're not the guys. And we weren't the kinds of guys to do that sort of thing anyway. We weren't the kind of guys that would fight with somebody or beat somebody up for no reason. We could defend ourselves, but we weren't gonna go beating up some dude just for no reason. We weren't those kinds of guys. So we were trying to convince him of that, but he really wasn't buying it. So I think at some point, one of us was like, why did you want to know about the necklace and the wallet? And he said, because I wanted to know if any of you were lying. And it seems like every one of you told me the truth. So he started to believe us, which was good, but he wasn't really fully convinced, you can tell, because he wasn't letting us go. And I think he was just also sort of playing mind games with us to see if like we would loosen up and then tell him something. And he was still saying like, do you even know who these people are? Do you know who did this? If you didn't do it, who did it? And we were like, we couldn't tell you that. We don't always hang out on this corner. We were explaining to him that for us to be on this corner was it was odd for us. It wasn't a regular spot of ours to hang out. We just happened to be on the street corner this one night because the payphone was there. And I think we just happened to be walking by the street corner and we just decided to use that payphone. And again, he wasn't fully buying it. And then he said to us, he said, you know what? I want you guys to turn around away from me, face that wall, and get on your knees. So we just did that. I mean, again, this guy had all the power. We just get on our knees, we face the wall, we look away from him, and there's silence. He said, you know what? I'm tired of talking. I'm ready to start shooting. And then he went, and that was it. We just waited. So he started to believe us, which was good, but he wasn't really fully convinced, you can tell, because he wasn't letting us go. And I think he was just also sort of playing mind games with us to see if like we would loosen up and then tell him something. And then he said to us, he said, you know what? I want you guys to turn around away from me, face that wall, and get on your knees. So we just did that. I mean, again, this guy had all the power. We just get on our knees, we face the wall, we look away from him, and there's silence. He said, you know what? I'm tired of talking. I'm ready to start shooting. And then he went, and that was it. We just waited. And I remember in that moment when I was utterly convinced that the next thing I was gonna hear was my head exploding on my shoulders with a bullet going right in the back of my head. I remember in that moment thinking, I'm okay with this. I couldn't believe it. Like, none of us panicked, none of us cried, none of us begged, nobody said, don't do this. We just were silent. It was almost like we knew that this is just the way it had to be. And this was before I was a Christian, this was before I was saved. The only way I could explain it is how the Bible says, a peace that surpasses all understanding. It was just this peace that this is the way it's gonna end. And this is it. I'm gonna die right now. And there's nothing I can do about it, and I wouldn't change it. Can't explain it, but that's the way I felt. And then we just waited, and I waited for the pop of the gun, and it never came. And I remember just thinking, why is he taking so long? Just get it over with. And then he said, I think the next thing he said was, okay, I believe you. If none of you flinched during that, then I believe you. None of you started talking, none of you started singing. I'm pretty surprised at you guys. He goes, none of you begged, none of you asked me to stop, none of you protested or, cried, nothing like that. He says, you guys are pretty tough. He said, there's only one problem, I can't let you go. And I'm thinking, oh boy, this guy's gonna still kill us. Even though he believes us, now he has to do it because this guy doesn't want to go to jail for what he just did. So I'm thinking, we're still not out of danger. This is gonna be bad. That's when he said, okay, everybody get up. We all stood up, we faced him. He said, I'm gonna tell you something that I didn't tell you before. He said, there's been somebody watching us the whole time, making sure you didn't run, and he's got a high-powered rifle pointed at the four of you, he said. And he's here with me to make sure you don't follow me. I'm gonna walk out of here, I'm gonna back out of here slowly. He said, and if any one of you try to follow me, he's gonna shoot you. He's watching you right now, he's got you on a scope, he's got a high-powered rifle, and he's highly trained, and he's gonna shoot any one of you that try to run. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm buying this, but I don't want to chance it, I'm okay. So whatever this guy wants, we're good. So he said, I want you to count to 500, all of you. Start counting now, very slowly. So we were like 1, 2, 3, and he's like slower. And we're like 4, 5, 6, and he said, I'm gonna back away. And again, he's got this hood on, it's a dark alley, and he's backing into the dark. And as he's backing into the dark, you could almost see like only a silhouette. And you still don't see his eyes, his face, anything. He still had the sunglasses on, he still had the scarf on, the hood, and he still has the gun pointed at us, and he's now backing away. And I'm still thinking like, this guy could start shooting at us and maybe take off and nobody would know. So I didn't think we were out of danger yet. And he starts backing out, and we're like 15, 16, 17, and we're looking at each other like 18, and this guy's backing away, and he's like slower, count slower, and he's backing away, and we're like 22, 23, 24, and all of a sudden you hear his footsteps get a little more quickened, and he starts running in the dark, and that's all you hear. You don't see him, you just look down this pitch black alley and you hear him running. And that was it. And we're still counting. We're like 30, 31, 32, 33, and we're still thinking maybe there's somebody with a gun pointed at us, like he said. So we're just waiting and waiting. He finally disappears, and that's when we were like, what the freak just happened? And we were just like amazed. We couldn't believe we'd survived that. We couldn't believe that we were alive, and we were blown away by the whole thing. And so out of the 4 of us, one of my buddies, I've just seen him like this past year, we hung out, and to this day we still talk about it. One of our friends that was there, he passed away about 15 years ago. He died of an overdose, so he's no longer with us. And my other buddy, I still see very occasionally, and we still can't believe, like to this day, we're like, wow, like what was that? And none of us will ever forget that. And you don't go through something like that with your friends and not become closer with them, and you don't ever forget something like that. A near-death experience like that, it changes you for life. It makes you usually more aware of your surroundings. And I now realize a situation can change like that with 0 warning. And so I learned a lot that night. Changed me forever.